Hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Transmissions of the Higher Self. And in this episode, we're going to be talking more about the map of Maya and its mechanisms. It is important for you to know that when you understand the nature of Maya, to which how your ancestors have spoken greatly on this topic relating to the material world, the world as you know it, the nature of impermanence, and the nature of illusion. There are those who understand that Maya itself just represents a shroud of illusion, a hologram in that way. There is that consistency of it, yes. But you must also understand that Maya itself also pertains to that of not just impermanence, but of substance. Everything that represents the nature of substance can be defined as Maya. And what is the underlying factor pertaining to substance? It is ether. Therefore, everything that represents the mind is ether. When you go beyond the mind, you are looking at intelligence consciousness, or consciousness intelligence. For it is consciousness intelligence that provides and that produces everything that we understand life, reality to be. But when you go back into the nature of Maya, it is the complete and total nature of ether. Therefore, when you understand the nature of Maya, the idea of an individual mind does not exist. There is only the one mind, if we're looking at the mind and Maya in this way. What is also referred to as Prakriti, the idea of matter, Maya, mind. You could look at that as the three M's, matter, Maya, and mind. That they are all part of the ether. The ether is what produces substance. And that all thoughts are of unification. You can never experience an individual reality because there is no such thing. There is no individual. There has never been a proof of an individual. You may show an identification card. You may have a name. You may have a physical body. You may have a personality. But that does not indicate anything relating to individuality. There's never been anything that has been able to prove that you are an individual. You've never been able to prove it. An individual doesn't even really exist. Well, if that's true, then what is this body that I carry? What is this personality that I have? What is this mind where I feel like I have my own thoughts? This simply represents an expression of the all. Because as stated before, you are the infinite. You are not the finite. To indicate yourself as an individual would be to admit to yourself a feeling that you're finite and that you are a finite being, but that's not the case. The infinite exists within you. You are the very infinite nature itself. It is the infinite that is condensing this body, this form, together to house itself into this form. Therefore, this form houses the infinite. So you've never experienced individuality. There is no individualism. There is no separate self. So when you're looking at the map of Maya indicates everything that has been expressed through thought. All vessels, all forms of life that represent the infinite, eternally expressing themselves through this map. And this map is, again, created out of the ether. As it is created out of the ether, everything that you understand as matter, Maya, mind, is simultaneously coexistent with each other. There may be those who say, well, if I go into my imagination, I'm able to see a dimension that I have created. Yes, and that's true. But when you still look at everything pertaining to that, every dimension connects to everything else. Every form of realm, even ones that you create, are still all part of the ether. The ether is what bonds all pertaining to the nature of substance. And when we go beyond the nature of substance, when we go beyond the nature of ether, it is Purusha. It is intelligence, consciousness, consciousness, intelligence. That is the provider. That is the giver. That is the beingness that is. And that can never, ever be surpassed. So when you look at the nature of the map of Maya, its mechanism has always been the utilization of thought. Thought is what makes the materialization of matter through the ether possible. Well, what is ether? Well, ether would represent that of a fluidic nature. It is a fluidic substance to which it is completely bendable and shapeable to the nature of intelligence. Without the idea of intelligence, there would be no ether. Without the nature of intelligence, there would be no Maya. Without the nature of intelligence, there would be no mind. Ether is that construct. It is that fluidic substance that manipulates, that bends, that therefore manifests everything through the nature of intelligence. Thought by itself cannot do it. Thought is just a medium. Thought is just a bridge. It is the intelligence that you are, as Purusha, as intelligent consciousness, as the self, as awareness, as God, that is manipulating the ether to patternize matter. And this is how you have dimensional constructs. Dimensional constructs are inventions pertaining to the lightness of vibration relating to the matter in question. They're blueprints. Because it starts off that way, let me take a look at the idea firstly of the causal, of the astral, and then of the physical. Well, when you look at the causal, all the causal represents is blueprint reality. A plane of ideas, a plane of conceptions. Everything that makes all matter what it is starts in the causal. But then there are those who want to bridge themselves down lower, below the causal. And so therefore the astral plane is formed. It's just a different band. It's just a different frequency. It's a little more dense. And that this represents more of a thought manifestation realm. It's the idea of materializing all the blueprint data contained inside the causal that therefore materializes itself through thought. And then if we want to anchor or drop or drill ourselves down a little bit more, we therefore go into the physical plane. But the physical plane really is just a modification of the astral. The physical plane does not really have its own realm-based quality as the astral or the causal. Really, I would say, all that truly exists from the nature of Prakriti, Maya, the mind, matter, would relate to the idea of the causal and the astral. The physical is a very small, is a fragment, as it were, of a dimension that has come through the astral. So the physical is just a solidified astral realm. That's it. It's nothing else. It's much more technological than as it would be said to see it as being natural. The physical plane is much more of an invention. It's an invention, it's a technology. Now, of course, the nature of Maya also is a technology, but it represents much more into the technology on a much more natural level. The physical level has been much more manipulated in a certain way. It is much more of an invention. It is much more, in that sense, manufactured to a certain degree that helps souls to come into this physical plane to understand more about the greater depths of themselves. So when you're looking at the material physical plane, it's like looking through a magnifying glass at something that is indeed a type of artificialized construct. The physical realm represents much more of that artificialized material construct that has been renditioned from the astral plane. Now, if you're actually looking at the size pertaining to the physical plane and the astral plane, you would understand that the astral plane would be at least hundreds of times larger than the physical plane. And if we're looking at the causal plane, you would look that the causal plane is approximately dozens of sizes larger than the astral plane, if we're looking at it in that way. So therefore you have the physical, you have the astral, which is much larger, and then you have the causal, which is even larger. And that represents the equilibrium, or the map of Maya, consisting of those three primordial domains, or rather two primordial domains, to where the aspect of the physical plane would be much more of a subdomain that is artificially created. Because when you look at the idea of how you understand life and believing that everything is linear, no. Much of the natural universe, to which I am speaking the astral and causal planes, do not operate in any way pertaining to what you understand linearly you are operating with on the planet Earth. The idea of linear-based time is an invention, it's a technology. It's not something that represents, as it were, the natural flow, representing the astral or even the causal. When you're looking at the nature and the sequence of time, as you understand time to exist, the idea of the nature of time when it comes to the astral plane is much more nonlinear. You do experience some sequences of movement, of event, but it is not so much in the idea that you are confined so much to a day and a night, or a day after day after day, or a week after week, or a month after month, or a year after year, and so forth. It does not work that way. When you move more into the astral plane, everything pertaining to what you know as time is very nonlinear. Nonlinearity is more of the natural flow from many civilizations that exist within the astral plane. Because you are looking at a greater number of civilizations that exist in the astral planes, even though there is a great number of civilizations that exist in the physical. If we were to look into the idea of the astral plane as part of the map of Maya, the civilizations that exist in the astral plane are much more in a state of longevity. The idea of how you function in the astral plane holds a greater extent to longevity. The idea of how you harm yourselves here in the physical plane, pertaining to physical harm, pertaining to, again, injury that is sustained through the nature of space and time, that is minimalized a lot more in the astral plane. Now, those in the astral plane can still be harmed, but it is a particular type of challenge that works a little bit more differently than what you would understand here in the physical plane. For example, you may accidentally hit yourself on the head and have a gigantic lump on your head. Whereas when you're looking at the astral plane, you can still be injured, but a thought can instantly repair it. Now, you can also do the same thing here in the physical plane, but because you are too attached to the materialistic concept of the physical plane, you feel that when you injure yourself, that you have to stay with that injury, that injury is going to be long-lasting. But therefore, if you are much more in alignment with the nature, for example, with the astral plane, you will realize that injury is nothing but a thought. And that the idea in that sense of having a thought that creates an injury, you can therefore utilize another thought to completely make that injury absent from yourself. Well, that's the example of how the astral plane works, which means you can extend your longevity pertaining to your astral form, because you do have an astral form. And for those in that sense who are very advanced relating to living through their astral form, they can appear as anyone they wish. You may be male, but you may therefore have the thought to be female. And just through that thought, to therefore appropriate your construct, moving it and reconfiguring it into a female form, this can be done. So again, it's a little bit more challenging to understand that in the physical plane. You have to look at the astral plane like you do your own dreams. In dream time, you go into dreamscapes, and all of a sudden you may notice that you're male, but all of a sudden you have a compulsion to transform yourself into a female, and now all of a sudden it's done. What's the exact same thing pertaining to the astral plane and civilizations that exist there. But it is not so much, as it were, the idea of metaphor and analogy to which much of your dreams represent when you are dreaming at night, because many of these dreams are trying to tell you through the language of the higher self how to work with yourself, how to harmonize yourself. Be aware of what you're holding on to and therefore release it. But when you're looking in the astral plane, there's much more of a vividness there. There's much more of a continuity and realization that you're existing in an astral plane. Many civilizations in the astral plane function through synchronicity. That's how they work. Everything is just naturally aligned to them. It's not about the idea that they are burying themselves in lower states of intellectual logic, where they feel, oh, that can't be possible, or that can't be possible. Many civilizations in the astral plane will not say that is impossible. Many astral civilizations in the astral plane will not give themselves the state of limitation. They are able to set themselves free. It has nothing to do with a spiritual journey. It's the idea that that's how they naturally live. They are adept in regards to working with the mind to harmonize themselves. And there are those in that sense who go beyond the mind and surrender to everything, to which they harmonize themselves to a greater degree. So it is very, very different relating to the physical plane here as the map of Maya. It is indeed quite the intricate creation. And again, like all things, it is all part of the simultaneity of creation. But you will discover that especially when you leave your physical body, you will realize that the astral plane feels much more at home with yourself, because many of you exist as part of these civilizations in the astral plane. In fact, many of the extraterrestrial civilizations that exist beyond your Earth function in the astral planes. Very few of them are actually indigenous to the physical realm. The physical realm pertaining to many of these helpers who are working alongside you and working behind the scenes is not their indigenous dimension. They're here to pay a visit. They're just visiting. They're here to do work. This is why they exist in pocket dimensions. Pocket dimensions are much more compatible with the native dimensions to which they exist in, relating to their nature of being, relating to their form. And so therefore, when you're looking at the map of Maya, yes, you have the physical, yes, you have the astral, yes, you have the causal, but it's looking much more into the nature altogether, quite commonly as the causal, that is again the most natural to all beings that exist within this universe. By existing, we mean to which they have constructed their form, the infinite housing their form. And that you all come in through the causal anyways. If you were to trace yourselves together in regards to the primordial blueprint of yourself in the state of this form, it has to start off with the causal. You don't just come into the physical. It's through the causal, drop down to the astral, drop down to the physical. So when you look at the idea of your primordial body, the primordial body exists in the causal. When you look at everything that represents prana, or chi, or mana, when you look at chakras, when you look at dantians, when you look at your nadis, they are all primordial constructs of the causal. They are therefore existing in the causal. Everything starts in the causal and then drops itself down because you're reaching different degrees of vibration through the causal, into the astral, into the physical. So therefore, right here, right now, you have the ability to tune into your causal form. The causal primordial form is the base of operations, the blueprint that is enabling you to function in this universe. It has to come to the causal first. But as I have stated, everything is simultaneously coexistence. There's no nature pertaining to the course of time. Well, I have to go on the causal first, and then I go here, and then I go here. No, it doesn't work that way. As you're in the causal, you are now instantaneous through all dimensions, because causal plane is the primordial blueprint dimension. That's where everything starts, pertaining to the nature of the construct of your form, in a manner of speaking. But again, everything is simultaneously coexistent. Then we go beyond the mind, as talked about, and that, of course, is your true nature. Looking at intelligence, looking at awareness, looking at consciousness, looking at God, looking at the self. That's who you really, truly are. But as this discussion relates to the mechanisms of the map of Maya, it is all through the construct of ether. Ether, again, is the resonance. It is that fluidic substance that is malleable through intelligence, to which thought is the medium or bridge that enables the ether to become of any design, to which intelligence desires. And that is very much the nature of Maya, all collectively, simultaneously, coexistent here and now.